Hey, it's Neil Parfit here. Welcome to video number 37 of getting started with the ER-301 sound computer. A user on the forum was asking if there was a way to make a clocked audio freezer, and the answer is yes. And it's actually a lot easier to implement now with some of the enhancements in 0.3. In my case, I'm running 0.3.24. So let's do this. The idea with this audio freezer is it takes incoming signal, and the moment you fire at a gate, it sort of freezes that signal at a specified division based on an outside clock. So we have all the tools to do this. So let's build something. The frozen signal could be something coming from like another synth or whatever. But just for this demo, I'm going to do it all in the box because I have this on my KB37 and I can create a little simple synth here. So let's do that. So I'm just going to create a little simple sine wave based synth. So I just need a sine wave oscillator. I'm going to assign the volt per octave A3, which is the CV, the 1 volt octave out from my KB37. So there it is. And then the interesting thing is about the oscillator unit is there is a level at the end, but that is a VCA. So if we set this to 0 and we go into the subchain, we'll tell it the gate of the KB37, which is A1. And then we can have that fire an ADSR. I'll turn this down a little bit so it's pretty snappy. And now, if we turn up the gain for this control, so there we go. Really simple synth just for the sake of this demo. And we can collapse this so we don't need to see these parameters anymore by going over the header, just pressing enter. So now we have this little synth done. So ER-301 is obviously really flexible. You could have this freezer right after this, or you could have it running on a completely different channel, standalone, as long as your input is set correctly. So if I wanted the synth from channel 1, I'd just grab output number 1. And if I switch my playback cable, the sound's coming out of out 1, digitally going into channel 2, and then going out output 2. But let's just keep this simple. I'm going to go back to output 1. We'll just have this all on one thing here. So I want to contain a bunch of processes within one unit. So let's do that. We need a custom unit. So I'm going to go to containers, custom unit, rude hotel. I'm going to rename this. I'll just call it freeze. Oops. I'll call it freezer. And for this freezer to work, we need a few outside control signals to just control the behavior of stuff happening within it. So we need a gate control for our freeze button. So we'll add that. So there's our gate. We'll call this freeze. And we also need a clock source. So we'll add that. I think we could use a gate or a trigger. I'll just use a trigger. So we'll call this clock. And I also want another control to control the number of divisions that the slicer thingy will work at. So I'll just add a linear control here, and we'll just call this, I'll just call it div for divisions. So there we go. Now if we exit it, we got our freeze control, a clock control, and a division control. So first things first, I'm going to assign my ADAC manual gates just to the right here to this freeze button. So that looks like it's on D1. So that's assigned. The clock is going to be from the clock output of my KB37. In your situation, it could be anything you want. On mine, it's A2. So there's my clock. And my division is going to be the mod wheel on my KB37. So that is B1. You can see me wiggling it here. And I'm just going to up the gain until the right part of it gets pretty close to the ceiling. And this number will be different depending on what source you're feeding this. Some joysticks feed more voltage, some feed less. In my case, it looks like it's almost a gain of 10 to get it right to the top. Actually, you know what? I think it is exactly 10 because you can see low to high. So perfect. So there are my controls. All right, so we have all the controls we need to operate this freezer. So let's go in and build the guts. So what do we need? We need something that's constantly recording the input signal. So we can use a feedback looper for that. Or actually, let's use the dub looper. And the idea here is this looper will constantly be recording. So you never hear it looping. It's just constantly recording the input signal. And then the idea is the moment you hit freeze, it'll punch out a record, so the signal's looping, and the clock will dictate how often this reset gets hit, and that will cause our sort of freeze effect. And also, we need a way to control the input monitoring, so when it's recording, we're not hearing it, we're hearing only the input signal, and then when we hit our freeze, it flips this to 100% wet, so we're only hearing the recorded signal. So basically there's 3 things that have to happen. So let's start with the easy one. Let's do our freeze. So the idea here is we want this freeze control to ping this punch button. So let's do that. So punch, assign, we're gonna go to local controls. There's our freeze gate, and there we go. But notice that we have a problem here. It's latching. I want it to be momentary. So all you have to do is go to the dub looper's header, go to the menu, punch latch, off. And that's a new feature since version 0.3. So now it's working in a momentary fashion. Now, the only problem here is I want this to be recording at all times until I press the punch button. So at this point in time, this is behaving backwards from what I want. So we have to just go to our freeze control. We need to invert the signal. So we can do that with a bipolar VCA. And we just set the level to -1, and that's it. That inverts it. So if we look at it now, oops. If we look at it now, prior to hitting the VCA, it's low to high. And now, after the post VCA, it's high to low. So now, I think all we have to do is we just have to tweak this threshold. Oh, not that one. I'm the wrong thing. We just need to tweak this threshold. And I think I have to adjust that on the outside as well. Let's just double check here. Yeah, so now when I press down, it's off. When I let go, it's on. And I think this one can just be set the way it was. Yeah, there we go. So now it's punched, and as soon as I press the gate, it unpunches. Perfect. And also, based on that signal, I want to be able to mod this this wet balance at the exact same time. So I'm going to set it to 100% wet, and I'm going to set the gain. Oh, I have to assign the input. Oops. So I'll assign it that same freeze local. And let's just see what happens here. I basically want it to jump down the moment I press the gate. You can see it. The only problem with this is because it's so instantaneous, it might create a sort of like a click. So all you have to do to fix that is just add a slew limiter in here with this like a tiny setting, just so it's not instant. So if we just give this like 20 milliseconds and like 20 milliseconds, it won't be an immediate jump, and you'll avoid that snap. Okay, so we're almost there. So now we need to assign this a buffer. So let's do that. Create new. You just need to set it to something higher than you'd ever need. So I'll just set it to like 15, 14 seconds or whatever. We need to engage this looper. And now let's add the clock to our reset. And that should be it. So let's just take a listen and see what it's doing. I'm going to turn on my arpeggiator. So So as soon as I press this, it will lock it. So that's kind of cool. The only thing is, though, I want to still be able to control my divisions. So all we have to do within this reset control, let's just add this new unit here. We'll go down to the bottom, and I want tap tempo. So there's our tap. And then all we need to do is just assign our CV control of my mod wheel to this mult. So I'm going to go to local controls, and I'm going to go to div, and let's see, we have to adjust our gain here. Let's see how that looks. Set this to 1. See, now you notice as soon as I up my mod wheel, it's increasing the divisions. And this in turn is going to hit this reset faster, depending on how high my mod wheel is. But it's all synchronized. So check this out. So I'll turn on my arpeggiator. I'm going to hit freeze. So there we go. Really simple freezer. So let's make this a little bit more interesting. After this freezer, I'm just going to add a tempo delay. Why not? We'll go to our delays. Where are those? Delays, clock delay. I'm going to use the same clock source, which is A2. And I'll just multiply this by 2, up the feedback a little. And then we can just really hear this sort of dance a little bit. I'm also going to add a reverb here just for fun. Just increase the size, up the dampening, and let's hear how that sounds. So, maybe a bit too much. So I'm just randomly hitting the gate button. So you can get some pretty interesting results here. Especially if you change chords while it's frozen. And because these are all clocking, if I increase my tempo on the outside, it all just synchronizes. I just press the gate again. So where this could get interesting is having another CV control automatically changing the divisions, and the clock pulse could be changing on the fly as well. So there you go. And you know what, depending on, if we go back into our freezer, if we go to our reset area, if you have these divisions set to 4, you could actually have the entire measure being recorded. So you can actually have a lot of stuff to work with instead of just like a quarter note kind of freeze. So let's take a listen now. Let's turn back my arpeggiator. So I'm going to hit the gate. So that's the entire thing looping now. So, I mean, I don't know. This is just my example using like an arpeggiated thing, but obviously this could process vocals, it could process an incoming drum loop, whatever you want. So hopefully that gives you some ideas of some audio mayhem. And remember, this is only one. I mean, I could have multiples of these happening at the same time, processing in different ways. And this whole thing, including that synth, is only taking up 18% CPU power. So obviously there's a lot to play with here if you wanted multiple loopers, multiple sort of slicey kind of things. Anyway, I am rambling, so I am out of here. See you later. Bye.